Are you ready to unpack something truly fascinating today? Because, well, when something goes wrong with our health, we humans have this almost desperate reflex to find a reason for it.
Oh, absolutely. We try to rationalize the pain.
Right. We say things to ourselves like, well, maybe this is meant to teach me a lesson, or, everything happens for a reason.
It is a deeply ingrained psychological coping mechanism. I mean, we are just pattern-seeking creatures by nature.
Yeah, exactly.
When you are faced with physical distress or just arbitrary suffering, finding a hidden design, even if that design feels kind of punitive, it often makes the situation feel more bearable.
Right. More bearable than just accepting that suffering can be totally random.
Exactly. We want to believe there is like a blueprint behind the distress.
But imagine walking into a room where that specific coping mechanism is just completely dismantled. A
Yeah.
space where you are explicitly challenged for believing that your suffering has some secret divine purpose.
Yeah, and told that trying to find one is actually holding you back.
It is wild, and that is exactly the atmosphere created by Pastor Dr. W.F. Kumuyi during a Power Night service for the Deeper Christian Life Ministry.
Right, which took place in Lagos, Nigeria on July 16th, 2026.
Exactly. We are doing a deep dive today into a highly structured, deeply passionate sermon. It is centered around a theme titled Complete Healing and Health by His Stripes.
And, to give this a proper look, we are using both the official, meticulously organized sermon outline document and the transcript of the live event itself.
Which is incredibly energetic, by the way. But I should say, just to set the framework here for you listening, our focus on this deep dive is not to debate theology or endorse any specific religious claims.
No, not at all. We're looking at this strictly through the lens of rhetorical structure and psychological impact.
Right. We want to analyze how a message this powerful is constructed, how language is systematically used to move an enormous audience.
Yeah, and how abstract faith is translated into concrete, literal action.
And the way Kumuyi translates that faith is just, well, it is what makes this material so captivating. He does not just offer spiritual platitudes.
Right, he builds his entire message on this precise, almost medical framework.
Yeah. He breaks the concept of divine healing down into three distinct phases: proclamation, prescription, and preservation.
But, before we get into the actual mechanics of that framework, we really need to set the scene. We have to talk about the environment where this is all happening.
Because the transcript paints a picture of a totally electric atmosphere.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
The service opens with these fervent, repetitive songs about a Pentecostal revival.
And that phrasing is so crucial, right, for understanding the baseline expectations of everyone in that room.
Absolutely. Pentecostalism, as a movement, places a massive emphasis on a direct, personal, and, well, highly experiential relationship with God.
So it is not just about quiet contemplation.
No, it often manifests in very visible ways. So when they sing about a Pentecostal revival, they're actively conjuring an environment where the supernatural is expected to just, intrude on the physical world.
The lyrics of the opening songs reinforce that perfectly. I mean, they are singing about lifting Jesus higher, and this phrase, verifiable miracles, is just repeated constantly.
Verifiable miracles. That is such a specific phrase.
Right. They are claiming literal, visible miracles with, quote, no subtractions.
Yeah, they are not asking for a general sense of peace or, abstract blessings. They are setting a clinical standard for a spiritual event.
Which is such a massive psychological recalibration right at the start of the night.
It is not just warm-up entertainment. When you have thousands of people chanting about verifiable miracles, you are establishing a very specific reality for the next 2 hours.
You are telling the audience to discard their skepticism entirely.
Exactly. You are telling them to expect tangible, measurable results.
And that perfectly sets the stage for Kumuyi's first major point, the proclamation.
Right, the first of the 3 Ps.
He firmly establishes that sickness is never authorized by God. And this circles all the way back to that coping mechanism we were talking about at the very beginning.
Because Kumuyi specifically calls out believers who think God, quote, put a disease on them to teach them a lesson.
He actually says, if you ask God, did you put that thing there? The answer is, no, I didn't.
Wow.
Yeah. He states definitively that any sickness not planted by God is an illegal intruder, and it must be removed.
It is an incredibly bold rhetorical move. I mean, it completely reframes the entire narrative of human suffering.
It really does.
Think about the mental state of a person sitting in that congregation who has been, chronically ill for years.
They are carrying so much weight.
Right. Usually that person is carrying two distinct burdens. The first is obviously the physical pain of the illness itself.
And the second.
The second is the mental and emotional burden of wondering, why is God doing this to me? Like, what flaw do I have? Or what lesson am I failing to grasp?
Ah, I see. So by making this absolute proclamation, Kumuyi completely removes that second burden.
He eradicates it entirely. By defining sickness as an unauthorized intruder, he shifts the audience from a state of passive resignation.
Like, I must patiently endure this test.
Exactly. He shifts them from that to a state of active, righteous indignation. This does not belong in my body, and I have the right to evict it.
Evict it. I love that phrasing. It is such an empowering psychological pivot.
And to really hammer that pivot home, he uses some highly evocative imagery. He draws on biblical texts from Isaiah, comparing God's spoken word to rain or snow.
Oh, the rain metaphor. I remember reading that in the transcript.
Yeah, he says, imagine a person standing in the middle of a massive downpour, right? Looking up at the sky and commanding the rain to go back up into the clouds.
Which is obviously physically impossible.
Right. And in the same way, he argues that God's word cannot return void. Once the proclamation of healing is spoken, it is an unyielding force of nature. It absolutely must accomplish its goal.
That is so striking. It feels like a definitive royal decree.
The metaphor serves a very specific purpose. It shifts the source of the healing from the subjective feelings of the individual to an objective law of the universe.
Meaning you don't have to, like, feel the rain working for it to get you wet. It just is.
Exactly. Kumuyi is trying to make the promise of healing feel as inevitable as gravity.
But, okay, knowing you have an absolute right to be healed doesn't actually cure you in that specific moment.
No, it doesn't.
If you establish that healing is a guaranteed decree, the immediate logistical question for anyone listening in that crowd is, well, okay, what do I physically do now to access it?
Right. And Kumuyi answers that by leaning heavily into his medical framework. This transitions us directly into his second point, the prescription.
The rhetoric just shifts entirely here. He literally compares God's instructions to a medical doctor giving a patient a strict regimen.
Yeah, he notes that a doctor examines you, writes a prescription, and says, if you follow this faithfully, it will work.
And he applies that exact same logic and that exact same burden of compliance to spiritual healing.
He does. The spiritual prescription he lays out requires prompt obedience to God's word, and it requires abandoning what he calls usurpers.
Usurpers. Like idols or evil spirits.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
You have to clean house. You have to remove anything that has no rightful claim over you.
Okay, but a major component of this prescription is what he calls the prayer of faith, right?
Yes, which draws heavily from the New Testament book of James, specifically chapter 5.
Which, historically, contains instructions for the early church.
Right, telling the sick to call for the elders to pray over them and anoint them with oil. It is a very foundational text for divine healing.
But what is really fascinating to me is how Kumuyi interprets the mechanics of that prayer for a modern audience.
Oh, absolutely. He defines it very specifically by what it is not.
Yeah, the transcript is incredibly clear on this point. He explicitly notes that the prayer of faith is not a prayer of doubt, sorrow, or regret.
And crucially, it is not a prayer of self-condemnation.
No, he actually mimics someone crying and say, oh, I'm no good, I'm bad, everybody knows that's why this sickness came on me.
Wow.
Yeah, he tells the congregation that this kind of negative self-talk is absolutely not the prescription.
That requirement mirrors cognitive behavioral therapy in a really striking way, don't you think?
Totally. It sounds a lot like a holistic wellness plan.
He is demanding rigorous mental discipline from his congregation. He's telling them they must actively reject shame and, well, the internal monologue of unworthiness in order for the medicine to work.
Because if you are constantly tearing yourself down, you are counteracting the prescription.
Exactly. And it goes far beyond just the internal mental state, too. The prescription gets deeply interpersonal.
Yeah, the text says that to be healed, you have to confess your faults, forgive offenders, and actively apologize to people you have wronged.
It's not presented as just a magic wand being waved over the crowd by the pastor. It requires rigorous, often uncomfortable action for the individual in their private life.
By linking physical healing to social repair like that, he is suggesting that you cannot compartmentalize your life.
No. You cannot have a toxic, unforgiving relationship with your neighbor and expect your own body to be in perfect harmony. The prescription requires aligning your internal thoughts and your external relationship.
So wait, I have to push back a little here. Just looking at the flip side of this framework.
Sure.
If you treat faith like a literal antibiotic regimen, take your prescription faithfully and it will work. Doesn't that inherently put the burden of the healing entirely on the believer's ability to execute those steps perfectly?
It absolutely does.
Like, you're essentially saying they failed to take their medicine. If someone in that congregation walks out and is still chronically ill, does the framework imply that they simply didn't forgive hard enough or they harbored a secret doubt?
That tension is it is the ultimate double-edged sword of this theological framework. The rhetoric provides immense agency, right?
Yeah.
You're not a helpless victim of a mysterious cosmic plan. You have a clear, actionable checklist.
Right.
But the logical inverse of if you follow the prescription perfectly, you will be cured is absolutely if you are not cured, you failed the prescription.
That places a tremendous psychological burden on the individual shorters to just perform their faith flawlessly.
It does risk replacing the burden of, why is God doing this to me, with the burden of, how am I failing to access my own cure?
Right.
However, within the immediate context of the live sermon, Kumuyi does not dwell on the failure state at all.
The momentum of the event focuses entirely on the empowerment of the action.
Exactly. He frames the apology, the forgiveness, and the rejection of doubt as immediate accessible tools that anyone can pick up right in that moment to take control of their life.
So let's follow that momentum then. If the person successfully takes the prescription, does the internal work, and achieves the healing, what happens the next day?
Well, just like in physical medicine, there has to be a vital maintenance phase.
You don't just take antibiotics for 2 days and abandon all healthy habits the second you feel better.
Precisely. And this brings us to the third and final section of his framework, the preservation.
The preservation addresses the longevity of the cure.
Kumuyi teaches that a healing can be lost if it isn't aggressively protected through continuous faith and obedience.
He introduces a highly evocative metaphor to explain this risk. He warns his congregation against catching, quote, Egyptian diseases.
Egyptian diseases.
Yeah, the transcript notes that Egyptian diseases are contagious. He says if you stay around them, if you copy their ways and manners, you will be affected.
To fully grasp that metaphor, you kind of have to look at the Old Testament narrative of the Exodus, which is obviously a foundational story here.
Right, the Israelites being freed from slavery in Egypt.
Right. But the theological trope is often that while it was easy to get the Israelites out of Egypt, it was incredibly difficult to get Egypt out of the Israelites.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they kept reverting to the toxic habits, the idolatry, and the mindset of the culture that had enslaved them.
So in the context of a modern sermon in Lagos, Egyptian diseases is just a metaphor for contagious, secular, or sinful behaviors in your immediate environment.
Precisely. It is the idea that your social environment, your workplace culture, the people you surround yourself with, they act as a spiritual and moral atmosphere.
Meaning you can be completely cured of a spiritual or physical ailment, but if you choose to remain in a toxic atmosphere, you will inevitably get infected again.
Yeah, it is a stark warning about the limits of a one-time cure.
And he grounds this ancient idea in a very relatable, modern medical analogy.
Yeah, the doctor analogy, yes.
Yeah, he tells the crowd to imagine a doctor who successfully heals a patient's lungs. The doctor fixes the acute problem, but then looks at the patient and warns them, drink and smoke no more lest you die prematurely.
Makes total sense.
And he connects this modern, everyday medical advice directly to Jesus' words in the Gospel of John.
Right, in John chapter 5, where Jesus heals a paralyzed man at the pool of Bethesda.
And what does he say to him?
Well, after the man is healed and walking, Jesus finds him later and says, sin no more, lest a worse thing come unto thee.
Kumuyi maps that ancient scripture perfectly onto modern medical understanding. He is essentially arguing that sin, or, toxic behavior, is a lifestyle comorbidity.
It is just a brilliant way to bridge the gap between abstract theology and daily health maintenance. I mean, a surgeon can clear your arteries, but they cannot force you to change the diet that clogged them in the first place.
Exactly.
Divine healing, in this framework, cures the immediate ailment, but the individual must take responsibility for changing the lifestyle that made them vulnerable. If they don't, the preservation fails and the ailment returns.
Now, there is a moment in this preservation section that really, really stands out. Kumuyi pivots from talking about toxic environments and shares this beautiful, almost poetic description of human anatomy.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
He is referencing a biblical story about a centurion's servant being healed, but he suddenly turns the word servant inward. He describes the different parts of the listener's own body, the hands, the legs, the brain, the nose, as literal servants.
The phrasing in the transcript is so striking. He says, the different parts of your body are your servants because they perform one role or the other for your well-being.
I love that concept. Viewing your own body as a dedicated staff of employees working around the clock to keep your company thriving, it just changes your entire relationship with your physical form.
It really does.
Your heart is clocking in every single second without a break. Your immune system is your dedicated security team. Your lungs are your ventilation crew. When you frame your organs as loyal servants working for your benefit, it creates an immense sense of respect and gratitude for your own biology.
That metaphor fundamentally shifts how a person treats themselves.
Right.
If you view your body merely as a vessel, or worse, as like a source of betrayal and pain, you might neglect it. But if you view your body parts as loyal servants tirelessly working for your good, you are much more likely to want to protect them.
Because you wouldn't intentionally poison a dedicated employee.
Exactly. By heavily leaning on these practical analogies, prescriptions, doctors fixing lungs, contagious environments, body parts as staff Kumuyi, provides a mental scaffolding that his audience can use every single day.
It makes the sacred deeply practical. When they go to the pharmacy, when they make a decision about what to eat, or when they choose to walk away from a toxic social situation, they're actively participating in the spiritual principles of proclamation, prescription, and preservation.
Because abstract theology can be incredibly difficult to hold on to when you wake up on a random Tuesday morning with a severe migraine, or when you're dealing with profound interpersonal conflict.
Absolutely.
But a structured, medicalized framework gives people concrete steps. It organizes the chaos of human suffering into a manageable, actionable checklist.
And looking at the entirety of Pastor Kumuyi's message, the narrative progression is incredibly deliberate. He takes the congregation on a complete journey.
It really is a masterclass in structured communication.
It starts with the absolute unyielding guarantee of the proclamation, where sickness is stripped of its divine mystery and declared an illegal intruder.
Then it moves into the rigorous, actionable steps of the prescription, demanding that the individual forgive others, apologize, and forcefully reject their own self-doubt.
And finally, it arrives at the lifestyle maintenance of the preservation, requiring the individual to protect their newly acquired health by avoiding toxic environments and treating their body with profound respect.
Whether you share the specific theology or not, analyzing this text offers a profound look at how language and metaphor can be systematically deployed to empower an audience.
It urges them to take total agency over their mindset, their relationships, and their daily habits.
It transforms a congregation of individuals from passive recipients of whatever life throws at them into active, vigilant participants in their own well-being.
It redefines health as a continuous, holistic action rather than a static state. And, that brings up a really compelling thought for you to ponder on your own, especially regarding the prescription phase.
Yeah, where he tightly links physical healing to the act of forgiving others and actively apologizing for our own faults.
Right. He presents interpersonal peace as a literal prerequisite for physical health.
It really forces us to consider the physiological toll of our unaddressed emotional baggage.
We spend so much time searching for complex external reasons for our everyday physical tension, right? The chronic headaches, the digestive issues, the persistent fatigue.
We look for a dietary trigger or a hidden illness.
But it makes you wonder, even from a purely psychological and physiological standpoint, how much of our general unwellness is actually just the physical manifestation of unresolved internal conflict.
That is a great question.
What might happen if we viewed an overdue apology to an estranged friend not just as a morally good thing to do, but as a literal necessary medical prescription for our own physical health?
It certainly redefines what it means to go to the doctor and get a prescription filled.
It really does. Well, that is all for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.